What's up, guys? Cameron Conaway. We're excited to start this Tri-Horn podcast. This is actually our first episode. We're excited to bring in Mike Conaway. He's with us here on our first one, so we're excited to get this rolling and see how it goes today. So, without further ado, we got Mike Conaway here. Introduce yourself. Kind of give us a little rundown on what you did. Kind of growing up, how you started out, and where you're from and all that kind of stuff.
Well, thanks, Cameron. First time, it's great to meet you for the first time ever. Wonderful circumstances. First time, yeah. No, Mike Conaway. I'm married to Suzanne Conaway, which is one of the best things that ever happened to me. And together we have 4 children, 7 grandchildren, and we live here in Fort Worth, Texas. Grew up in Odessa, Texas, and I was privileged to be reared in a Christian home. My mother was a staunch Baptist standard waving, Bible thumping Christian woman.
By the book, yeah.
Yeah, and is a good example of how intense her commitment to Christ and raising her family the right way. We would go to church. She was a church secretary for a long time, and we would go to church every time the doors were open, obviously. One Sunday morning in the middle of the winter, we were having an ice storm in West Texas. If you've never had an ice storm in West Texas, you've not really enjoyed cold weather. And so Sunday morning, though, we're going to church. So the good car, my dad was working for a drilling company. He was working on a drilling rig. He was working morning tower, which was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and so he wasn't home yet when it was time for us to go to church. So we go out getting the good car, and it's all frosted over, iced over. So she gets some warm water, pours on the windshield to de-ice the front windshield, backs out, pulls around the corner, and it ices up again. So she pulls to the curb. We live in a corner lot, pulls to the curb, and my little brother's in the front seat, and she says to him, keep your foot on the accelerator to keep the engine revving so it would warm up and the heater would work. Yeah. And so she opens the door, and as she does, he slams his foot on the accelerator because he doesn't know any different. It's still in reverse instead of park. The car lurches straight back, catches the door on a fire hydrant, and wraps the front door into the front fender of our good car. Yeah. And fortunately, Mom's guardian angel, she was not caught between the fire plug and the door. But
Jesus,
anyway,
yeah.
It's a wreck. Yeah. And so a guy drives up in a pickup and sees the wreck, and he says, "Ma'am, may I help you?" And she says, "Yes. Will you take us to church?" And he said, "Well, yes, ma'am, I will." So he takes us to church, and our pastor lived across the street, across the alley from the parsonage, across the alley from the church. So he just walked across. And I don't remember many people there but him and us. And my dad comes home from work all night and pulls up, and our good car is on the curb with the door wrapped around the fire hydrant. So,
he's freaking out.
Mom was a staunch Christian, and she raised the 3 of us children to be good Christians. And so growing up in Odessa, I had a father that married my mother when I was 3 years old, 3 and a half, I guess. And my little brother was 2, and my little sister was 3 months old. And so this is a man who had a deep impact on my life because of his commitment to loving my mom and raising 3 children that weren't his biological children, but he could not have loved us anymore had he been our biological father. Yeah. And so big impact on my life in terms of watching him, how he acted as a father.
Raised you guys,
he was old school. Mainly his job was to provide for us, and he would work 16-hour days to make that happen, take good care of my mom. And I never once in all these years ever heard my dad regret in the least committing to a family.
What he had to do.
And so a big impact on my life.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's the foundation.
Yeah.
And then I was high school. I played high school football.
Yeah.
And
Permian.
Permian High School. Our junior year, we were 4-6 and really stunk up the place. Probably weren't that good. And the crosstown rivals, OHS, led by one Larry Gatlin, who was the famous singer, was quarterback, same age as us. OHS won the district championship that year, but they lost the first playoff game. So the school board the next morning on Saturday fired both head coaches.
Oh high standards.
Exactly.
High standards.
So they offered the job to a guy named Gene Mayfield. He could pick either high school, and he picked Permian.
Okay.
And another influential man in my life was Gene Mayfield, because he came in our spring of our junior year, and then the next fall we won a state championship, Permian's first state championship. We had two blue chip players, the rest of us a bunch of just journeyman guys that he and his coaching staff convinced could do stuff that we didn't really think we could do.
Yeah.
And won the state championship, and it started that 30-plus year run that Permian had in high school football in terms of dominating. I think they had 6 state championships, and they were rarely didn't make the playoffs, and so it was a big tradition. But Coach Mayfield instilled in us this idea that to never quit. You're going to get knocked down. You're going to get hit so hard that the first thing hits the back of your helmet and your shoulder pads, but you just got to get back up, get in the huddle, and then go find that guy and hit him right in the face.
Yeah.
But just never quit. In fact, nobody can make you quit. You can make yourself quit, but nobody can make you quit.
Yeah.
And preparation, being better prepared than the other teams. We started that year in the sand hills of Monahan's Sand Hill State Park, running up and down those sand hills for conditioning exercises.
Different.
And it's anyway, just being better prepared. So consequently, in the fourth quarter, we were always in better shape than anybody else we played.
That's what you do in preparation.
Exactly.
Go
just
mile.
being ready to go at it.
That's
and
awesome.
And then, so I went to I walked on to East Texas State University in Commerce, Texas, and my first I'd played my freshman season at Ranger Junior College and lettered there, and it was a terrible circumstances. So we walked on. My roommate and I walked on that spring, and so the first practice, I've got to make a showing.
Yeah,
because I'm walked on. I don't have a scholarship.
Got to prove yourself.
And so I'm offensive lineman or a lineman, and first drill after calisthenics was a board drill.
Okay.
And apparently I wasn't very good at high school physics, because the guy lined up in front of me was a guy named Sam Walton, who started for the Jets the year they beat Baltimore in the Super Bowl.
Good competition.
Yeah. And Sam was 325-ish. I'm strapping
Clocking
190, and I'm going to kill him.
Yeah.
I'm going to pancake that guy. I'm going to hit him so hard that I'm just going to knock him out. So anyway, I got an extra foot or so off the board. I'm the offensive, and he's the defensive guy.
Yeah.
And I hit Sam as hard as I've ever hit anybody. I knocked myself out. And so I'm face down on that board. My eyes are going crosswise.
Looking up.
Yeah, and this hand grabs me by the back of the shoulder pads and drags me to my feet. It's the coach. And he goes, well, Coach Crawford. He said, well, Conaway, welcome to Lone Star Conference.
Yeah, welcome to the big world. Yeah.
So the rest of that spring and all next fall, my job was to play in front of Sam.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Little dummy.
Sam was an offensive tackle, and that was back when head slaps were legal.
Real.
And
yeah.
Sam had ham hocks for hands, and so he could clock you and
you'd be knocked
concussion.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so every time that we'd run offense, they'd say, "Give me a defense over there." Yeah, Conaway, get in front of Walton. So
you guys are best friends.
Exactly. At East Texas State, I was a pre-law major because I wanted to go to law school.
Yeah.
And I was the first one in my family to go to a 4-year university, and I assumed to get into law school you had to be a pre-law major, pre-med, that kind of stuff. So for some reason, I took an accounting class, and the second semester, Charles Cato, the professor, I'd done well in the first semester, and so he one day after class, he said, "Hey, stop by and see me someday." Oh, okay. So I stopped in, and he said, "So what's your major?" I said, "Pre-law." He said, "Why?" I said, "I'm going to law school." He said, "Well, you can get into law school with a PE degree." I said, "You can?" He
no
said,
chance.
Yes. He said,
wow.
"What happens if you don't get to go to law school?" I said, "I'm going to law school. I've always done everything I said I was going to do." He said, "Well, humor me. What happens if the outside chance that you don't get to go to law school, what do you do with a pre-law degree?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "Well, you could sell shoes at Kenny's. There was pay less, but you could do that without that degree." So he said, "You've shown an aptitude in accounting.
Yep.
Change your major, and then on the outside chance you don't get to go to law school, then you've got something you can actually do with your degree." So that short conversation by a professor who cared changed the trajectory of my life.
Yeah.
Because I graduated top of my accounting class, and had offers from I think 7 of the big 8 firms. Went to work at Price Waterhouse. And so, looking at that accounting experience, became a CPA and practiced in a variety. I practiced with Price Waterhouse for a long time. I was in banking or oil and gas for 6 years, banking for 6, and then I hung out my own shingle in 1993, and did that to 2005 when I was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. And so, you're looking at that path that I took from the accounting degree led to everything else that turned out to be what I pretty proudly say was a nice career that I had. It was because Charles Cato cared enough to
let you know,
to say something about that.
And you would have never thought, I mean, to see how it turned out, you could have never drawn up in your head that would have been the case.
Oh no,
and
not
how
at all.
you would have.
You're not there yet, but most adults, any older adults, can look back at their lives and see turning points or change points, pivot points that at the time seemed pretty inconsequential. I mean, a college major is a big deal, but I had no clue that it would be the big deal that it turned out to be. And so it's people having impact on your life. I'd like to hope that I've had some impact like that, similar to what Charles did. I have no idea if I did. He never knew what that did and where I actually wound up and got to go.
Did you ever send him a thank you letter?
I did not.
No.
I tried to find him one time years later, and I couldn't locate him. I think he'd already passed, but just a great individual. I think I graduated and went to work for Price Waterhouse for a little while. Got that wonderful letter from my draft board. I'd won the draft lottery, which is the only lottery I've ever won. And got drafted in the Army and went to Fort Hood. Julie and I, the wife at the time, high school sweetheart, that kind of deal. She and I both graduated from East Texas State. After serving at Fort Hood as an MP and a traffic accident investigator, I got out. We got out in April of 72, and Julie was pregnant with your dad. And so I went back to work for Price Waterhouse on May 1st. Well, her pregnancy was a pre-existing condition. And so insurance didn't cover it.
A little more important.
We were a little strapped for funding for a while there. And but given all those circumstances, law school was never really on the table.
Radar.
Although my senior year, I'd taken the LSAT test and done really well. And I called the draft board and said, hey, I want to go to law school, but my number's 133. And they said, well, you're going to get drafted, but just go ahead and go to law school for one semester, and then we'll draft you.
See where you land,
And that didn't make any sense. So as it turns out, Charles Cato was correct. I didn't go to law school, but for a lot of different circumstances. But in spite of all that, I think I did pretty well.
Yeah, it turned out just fine. That's awesome.
One of my clients at Price Waterhouse was a young fellow named George W. Bush, and he and I went to work for him in 1982. I'd already left Price Waterhouse and was in the oil business, and he saw me on the street one day and said, "Hey, let's go build the next Exxon." So I said, "All right."
Amen.
So he and I were partners for 5 years in the oil business. Wish I'd been partners in the baseball team. Would have
been nice, huh?
Made a lot more money.
Get free tickets.
But his dad was VP at that time, and so something going on politically all the time. People come through, talking to George about what they should do with their political careers, and should do what they had one, all this kind of stuff. And then we sold the company to a company here in Dallas, Texas, and I went to work at a bank. In Midland as a chief financial officer, did that for 5 years, and then 93 hung up my own shingle and practiced as a sole proprietor until 05 when I joined Congress. So
that's awesome. So obviously from 05 to 2020 is when you served in Congress. 2000, right? That's
21.
21. Talk to me about some of the struggles that you had faced, obviously to get into Congress, but kind of, diverting and, changing your almost career path, right, to go into Congress into something that you've never even seen before and, been a part of. What was the kind of transition into that, and then the struggles that it took to be able to get to that point?
When President Bush, then became Governor Bush in '95, he appointed me to the State Board of Public Accountancy, which is a regulatory agency that oversees the practice of accountancy in Texas. It's a volunteer job, but that got me in front of the Texas legislature through 3 sessions, working with them to try to get legislation passed and that kind of thing. And I got to thinking that I could do that. Our U.S. representative was a guy named Larry Combest, and Larry was chairman of the Ag Committee. Had been up there for a long time. He's going to be there forever. And so I'd really thought about. I'd served on the school board for 1 term, 3 years in 85 to 88. I'd been asked to run for mayor and that kind of stuff, which never did make a lot of sense. Yeah. And so, but our state senator had begun to make noises about not running again. Yeah. So I thought if I did run for office again, it'd probably be that state senate. Okay. Well, I wound up being chairman of the State Board of Accountancy in Texas, and also became chairman of the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, which is an organization that represents 55 jurisdictions, and I was chairman of that. And as a part of that chairmanship, Suzanne and I went to Hong Kong to participate in the World Congress of Accountants. This is in November of '02. Dang. And so vision this. 5,000 accounting leaders from around the world, all in one spot.
Talking numbers.
Oh, it was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
If you could have converted the collective charisma to gunpowder, we couldn't get that door down. But while
you can talk a spreadsheet, though. That's for sure.
Exactly right. So while there, I got a note that Larry Combest, who was our U.S. representative, who had gotten. This is late November, early November. He had won re-election with 90% of the vote, and then following that, he announced that he was going to quit the following May, and so it created a special election. And so I talked to Suzanne about it, and so we decided to run. So it's a 12-hour difference between Hong Kong and Midland, Texas, and so I began to call people back and get them out of bed and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Ran in that special election. There were 17 people in it. There were about 10 or 11 Republicans, a couple of Democrats, a Green Party, a Constitutionalist, one guy that put his name on the ballot and never showed up for anything. Yeah. And in a special, you have to win by 50% plus 1. So with 17 people in the race, on that first round of balloting in early May of '03, nobody got 50%. Randy Nagelbauer from Lubbock, which at that point in time the district was Lubbock and Midland, Odessa, and Lubbock was bigger. Randy got 22% of the vote. I got 21% of the vote. And then the runoff was 30 days later, and I wound up losing that by 587 votes or so. Not that I remember those kind of numbers.
Yeah, it's the losses that oftentimes haunt you. Yeah.
Yeah. '03. Tom DeLay was majority leader of the U.S. House of Representatives, and Tom Craddock was chairman, the new chairman of the Texas House of Representatives in Austin. And at that point in time, Texas had the congressional delegation of 32 was split half and half Democrats, half Republicans. Yeah. But there were no statewide elected Democrats in Texas at all. And 1616 didn't really represent the makeup of the Texas electorate. No. So they went through and redid the map in November of '03 and created a new District 11, which was Middle Odessa, San Angelo, and 33 other counties to make up the 700,000 people that live there. And so that was an open seat. And Suzanne and I just kept going to San Angelo because I'm pretty sure if I knew back get done, it would include Middle Odessa and San Angelo and not Lubbock. And so we began to go to San Angelo and meet with Republican women down there, Republicans, and just campaigning just in case. Yeah. And sure enough, it came about that was the district. And they only had one opponent in the primary and beat him pretty handedly. And then District 11 is and was the second most conservative district, Republican district in the United States. And so it was really always about the primary. Because in general, I won all 8 of those without any issue whatsoever. Man. And that got me into Congress.
That's awesome.
One other foundational thing that was important to where I'm at today is so your dad and your uncle's mom, Julie, came down with leukemia. And she battled leukemia for 4 years, put a titanic battle on. She did a bone marrow transplant, Just all kinds of stuff and she had such a wonderful spirit about her and such a Christian spirit about her. Her oncology folks there in Midland, oncology is a tough practice.
Oh, yeah.
Because you lose so many patients.
Yeah.
And they rarely ever acknowledge that. But she had such an impact on that practice. David Watkins and I'm blanking on the other doctor's name, impact on their practice that they actually closed the practice for her services
Really?
to come to
her.
And so
Wow.
that was in February 8th of 1987. And so and then 4 years later, a bit more than 4 years later, a wonderful woman came into three of our lives, and Suzanne, and she and I got married. Her husband had been killed in a plane crash on Valentine's Day. So Julie died on the 8th of February. Randy died on the 14th of February. And so we don't do a whole lot of celebrating on Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
But that was 34 and a half years ago. God has blessed us immensely.
Yeah.
I've been able to be a father figure for two little girls that are now full-grown adults. And Suzanne got to be a mom figure for your dad and your uncle.
Yeah.
And
it's a beast of a job.
It was.
Yeah.
But anyway, that she and I getting married also contributed to me being able to be where I was throughout all that process.
Yeah.
Because without her and her support, her backing, particularly during the 16 years I served, would not have been possible, because she was an incredible trooper. And she wrote 8,500 thank you notes to folks in the district who gave us money. Anybody who gave us money, I gave you a buck, whatever, maxed out.
Yeah.
She would write them a handwritten thank you note to say thank you for that. And it had a big impact on me continuing to get reelected all the time. So.
That doesn't tell you that she's a keeper. I don't know what else will. Man, 500 notes.
Yeah.
So you talked about Julie dying and kind of how, your whole kind of world shifts, right, abruptly. Obviously, you may have known, that she was going to pass. But how did your perspective change about life itself when something like that happens? When, you've got two kids that you're trying to raise, your wife dies. How does your relationship with God almost kind of, you're a big Christian, how did that shift almost in terms of what did you feel like God was trying to show you in such a hard time?
So I had no clue about that. I'm just walking a path. Like I said, Julie put up a titanic struggle to fight that disease off. I remember one of the worst circumstances was, so she did a bone marrow transplant, and starting in September of '86, and that process is gruesome to the max.
Yeah.
I mean, it's beyond gruesome.
Pretty much just kills you. It kills your body, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And then I didn't realize what they did, but they harvested her bone marrow while she was in remission, and then they kill the bone marrow with radiation and chemicals and those kind of things, and then they just give you an IV and put that fluid back in your body, and somehow those cells migrate back into the bone marrow and start producing blood again. So, but it's stunningly gruesome to have that go through.
Yeah.
So we get her home. That started in September. It's a 3+ months. We're doing it here in Dallas at Baylor Hospital. Took over 3 months, and get her home in late December, early January. Everything's great, and starting to recover. And then she relapsed in the middle of January. Once that happened, she had all the chemo and all the radiation she could have, so there was nothing else that could be done. Yeah. And at that point in time, Brian and Snake, his little brother, we had just talked about their mom being sick. But I can remember sitting in the car on the street there in Midland by Bobby Redmond's house to have to explain to them that their mom was going to die. And I also remember I'd gone to hospice to go start that process. And I remember sitting in the car by myself, incredibly emotional experience, just telling God, I can't do this. I can't do this. You don't have any choice. But so when you're walking a path like that, you don't hindsight's wonderful right now, right? I'm looking back on,
but you don't know.
Almost 40 years since that that happened. When you're walking through it step by step, it's a day-to-day deal, and without God's support and the faith, I don't know how people who walk that path get there without strong faith, because it's just foundational. You have no clue what's next, but you just know that God's got plans for us, and His plans did not include Julie finishing off raising the two boys, and so, but you just stay true to it and trust it, and
He blessed you guys in so much.
and you wind up doing it,
Yeah.
and then I got to marry a woman who had walked a similar path. I mean, Randy walked out one morning, Valentine's Day, to get on a plane to go to Dallas, and that plane crashed, and her world went upside down in a nanosecond. We had 4 years to kind of begin to cope with it, but hers was entirely different. She had to go to school and pick up two little girls and tell them their dad had died in a plane crash. So, and she's a strong woman of faith as well. You question, you scream and holler inside. You don't understand, but you just keep living day to day, and don't give up on the faith, and just know that God does love you, and He loves her little girls, loves my two sons, and you just make your way through it as best you can. In hindsight, we can see the path I think God intended for she and I to get married 4+ years later, to continue that process, to be able to build a foundation of a family that all 4 children are good Christian kids. The 3 families that have children, all 7 of them are good Christian young men and women, strong young men of faith, like the one I'm looking at. And so, as a parent, you look at your success through the success of your grandkids, right? The Bible teaches that you pass it on to each generation, and so we were able to pass on to the generation that your parents that importance, and now they've passed it on to you, and so in a sense, Suzanne and I have done what God tells us to do, and that is to pay it forward, so to speak, to make sure that grandkids have that kind of foundation that then when you have children, it'll be your responsibility, and your dad will be tickled to death when you do what he did to lay that foundation.
Exactly. So talk to me about, obviously Congress took a big chunk of your career, right? You invested so much time into that. Talk to me about some of the fears and some of the, lessons learned throughout that time specifically. Obviously with so much pressure, on, you having to go back to the district and, talk to people and all that kind of stuff, but then having to go back to DC and the job that you have to do there. Talk to me about some of the, the fears that you had, some of the things that you were worried about, or, the lessons that you may have learned.
I had such a good time doing it. I love that job every single day. I love what I did in D.C. I love what I did back home, and I had a great support system. I had a wonderful team of relatively young men and women that ran the office in D.C., that ran the 6 district offices we had. There are a couple of elderly ladies in there who'd be tickled to death to be called young women. But so I had a great support staff, and I never I just loved it so much. I just had a great time doing it. And coming from a district that was so conservative and which linked up with my personal views on what I had to do, it was very rare that I ever had any kind of a decision to make that wasn't widely supported by the folks back home. And I knew that was the case. Although every member should be willing to take a vote that they know in their heart of hearts is correct, that will cost them their job, if that makes any sense. Because every once in a while you'll have your constituents who want something and they don't have all the information that you have.
Yeah.
And they've got just the 10,000-foot version of it, and they make their mind up, but in your heart of hearts what's the right answer to do. Yeah. The one vote that I had that was in that category was in 2008. It was just ahead of the financial meltdown when the collateralized mortgage obligation market collapsed, and with it came a real threat to the banking system in our nation. So I'd done 6 years in banking, I don't know if I mentioned that or not, and I was an investment guy for the bank. And so it was my responsibility to buy and sell Fed funds every single day.
Yeah.
The Fed fund market was coming unwrapped. The commercial paper market was coming unwrapped. It was a legitimate deal. We had Hank Paulson and the chairman of the Fed coming to the Republican conference, and they are white as a sheet because they know how bad things are about to get. And we needed to do something to try to stabilize that wreck that was coming. And but the folks back home in District 11, it really hadn't touched them because it really wasn't involving them. The banking still worked, and they didn't really know what was going on day to day within the banking system. And so the first time we voted on it, I voted no because the version didn't make total sense as to what we needed to do. Went home and darn near got ticker tape parades, people just screaming on how proud they were that their congressman had voted against something. But I knew we had to do something. So we got back, and they raised the FDIC limits on personal checking accounts, did some other things, and Paulson and Bernanke came to us again, and they said, folks, this is we got to do something. You people have to do something because the system is coming unwrapped because of the weight of all that bad debt. And so we did something. We passed it. It was called the TARP vote, and I voted for it. And there are still people today who I come into the room in Midland, Texas, the hair on the back of their neck stands up because they just hate me for it.
Man.
But all these years later, it was the right thing to do. We didn't do it the way it should have been done because it morphed into a better practice. But that first vote settled the markets down.
Yeah.
And said,
that's what you thought was best.
Exactly. And so I knew what the right answer was. Most of the folks in District 11 didn't.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it happened in November of 2008. September, October of 2008, and so it was too late for anybody to run against me by November of 2010.
Yeah.
I was back in good shape, so that was really the only vote that I ever really knew that I was could possibly cost me the job.
Yeah.
Everything else was just I loved the job so much, and it really worked great. I don't recall a time when, other than that TARP vote, that I really didn't know exactly what I needed to do, and that would line up mostly with what the folks back home were willing to put up with. But it's a terrific responsibility. It's enshrined in our Constitution.
Yeah, it's
important. The people who hold the jobs aren't, and there's a real distinction there, because I used to be a congressman. There's nothing more former than a former member of Congress.
Yeah.
There's only 435 of them at any one point in time, and they've got a really important job. But they come and go. I mean, the graveyard's full of indispensable people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so folks who get up there and think they're the reason why they're important really lose sight of what they should be doing.
What the goal is.
Yeah, what their mission should be.
Yeah.
Every member should determine ahead of time how long they're going to serve. Suzanne was not super excited about that prospect.
Buckle up. Yeah.
And so I told her, I said, okay, I will do 5 terms, which would be 10 years, which would be a meaningful career.
Yeah.
And after 5 terms, then you get a unequivocal veto. No, not say.
Oh, wow.
Veto.
Wow. Cut ties. Yeah.
Yep. Mine is so.
So what do you have to do to get the 3 more terms?
Well, I became chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, and she knew how important that was to agriculture and everything else.
It's a good excuse.
Yeah, exactly. So that gave me 3 more terms. But, that was in the piece that haunts me about it is I spent 16 years in Washington, D.C. going back and forth, and I missed 16 years of your life. And your older brother's life, and your older brother's life, and the other 4 grandkids. I wasn't there nearly as much as I would like to have been as a granddad, but it was a choice I was making. I thought it was important, but that piece does haunt me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't get to watch you play soccer as much as you played, and all the other things that I didn't get to do while I was committed to serving our nation. But it was a wonderful 16 years. Like I said, I loved every second of it. It's just a great job, great responsibility. I remember standing on the House floor in January of 2005, taking that oath of office for the first time. And I got tears running down I would get kind of emotional from time to time. Yeah. And I'm standing there thinking of all the greats of American leadership who stood on that floor and took that exact same oath.
Crazy?
That I was now adding my name to that list. When I took that oath, prior to that, there were 6 new Texans taking that oath of office that night. Prior to that, there had only been 238 total Texans take that oath. Since 1845 until 2005, only 238 had the high honor and high privilege of representing Texas in the U.S. House of Representatives. Yeah. And I was about to add my name to that group. And so
special. Special.
It really was.
So there's a quote that sticks out to me that I've just kind of kept in my head through the past couple of years, and it says, "Be someone you want to emulate. Set a good example. You cannot be a leader if you don't care for other people." Obviously, you were given the privilege to lead thousands of people in your tenure as in Congress, and even before that, through your banking experience and all that kind of stuff. Talk to me, like, what is that quote? How does that quote resonate with you in terms of your experience and the leadership that you had to give to other people?
So I would get asked the question from time to time, what did you do to get there, kind of thing. And my reaction would be, prepared.
Yeah.
Be as prepared as you possibly can, because people will notice that preparation, and they'll begin to rely on you when you prove that you know more about what's going on than they do. And one of the things I did in Congress, I tried to be the most prepared guy I could, and I began people would come to the floor and look it up, see how I voted, and to see how, in comparison to how they might want to get vote.
Controlling the controllables. That's kind of what you did.
Yeah. And then the other thing was, do the very best job you possibly can every single day, and it's a habit, because I talked to, when I was in Congress, I would talk to high school kids a lot. I would talk to them about build a habit of being the best you can with the time you've got to be there. Good example: if you're volunteering for a group and your group has decided they're going to clean up trash on the highway one Saturday morning, you show up on time. You be the best trash picker-upper there. Yeah. You be better than anybody else, because someone's always watching what you do, always. And if they see you going above and beyond all the time consistently, then they will begin to trust you with greater responsibilities. And so just continue. It's kind of back to what Gene Mayfield talked about. Just be the best prepared you possibly can to get that job done. Yeah. And set that as a standard for yourself. And like I said, nobody controls that but you. Yeah. And that's totally in control. Now, you may not get the results you want, but if you're as prepared as you possibly can, then you've got yourself
in a good position.
To move forward. Yeah. And so that practice, I've tried to, whatever it's. I was on the school board one time, and school boards have 2 jobs: hire and fire the superintendent, and set policy. And so I brand spanking new on the board, and they gave me the curriculum guide for English. Yeah. And so I read it, and we go to the board meeting, and the chairman says, "All right, all in favor of adopting the English?" I said, "Whoa, stop. Are we going to talk about it?" He said, "What do you mean talk about it?" I said, "Well, I got a few questions." And they said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, turn to page 88. I said, "One of the curriculum pieces that's supposed to be important to the English department is proofreading. And at that spot, you spell proofreading Proof. You misspell proofreading on the curriculum guide." And then I took him through about 50 other things in that guide. And so nobody else on the board had read it. And so just be
detail, attention to detail.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So what is the number one thing that I feel like, in your mind, what is the number one thing that's holding people back from reaching their full potential? And just in your experience, based on, on the conversations you've had, people you've seen throughout your entire life, what is the number one thing that you've seen?
Part of it is, if you think you can't or you think you can, you'll be right. So if you think you can't do it, you'll be right.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? And it's so simple. Yeah.
Then there's a good chance you can be. Yeah. There's no guarantee for it, but if you quit before you find that out, then you'll never know in that regard. But I think that people just they're afraid of the results. They're afraid to try and fail. Theodore Roosevelt had a wonderful quote one time about the man in the arena, and I won't get it all correctly, but he talks about that the man in the arena, the blood, the sweat, and the tears, is the one who enjoys the highs of victory and the lows of defeat. but he'll never be with that person, that cold, lukewarm person on the sidelines who knows neither the highs or the lows of victory and defeat.
Negative energy.
And so you got to get in the fight and be a part of what's going on. And people sometimes worry that, well, I don't think I can do that. I don't want to be embarrassed myself, whatever it is in that regard. But just if you think you can't, then you're right.
You're right. Yeah. Wow. Talk to me about the victories. Like, what is the victory in your mind? Like, what is success? Like, you've gone through, you've owned a business, you've dealt with, multi-million-dollar owners, to going into Congress and seeing things at a world view. What is success? What's the victory coming out of that? What do you look at that as?
Well, that's all the fruit of the foundation that was laid earlier in my life. I mean, my faith in Jesus Christ as my personal Savior. My life verse is Luke 12:48. It says, paraphrase, "To whom much is given, much is required." And God blessed me with a little bit of talent and a stunning amount of life experiences that I thought qualified me to do the things that I tried to do and got done. And so really all of those accomplishments is I just see that as the fruit of that great foundation that I was able to get. Was living being reared in a Christian home and all the advantages that entailed and bringing it forward. So my life as a Christian, I hope that there's no saying that if Christianity is ever a crime, I hope there's enough evidence in my life that I could get convicted. And so I hope that I've been able to live that life and pass on those values and live that. Be a good example for other people to see and about the way I've conducted myself, the way I've led my life.
So in your final speech of Congress, I went back, took a little notes, and there was a quote that kind of stuck out to me, and it said, "There's often an easy path in life, but rarely is it the right path to walk." I mean, how prevalent is that? Like, if you were going to talk to other people, like how important is that? To live out.
And that gets back to, if you think you can't, then you're going to take that easy path.
Yeah.
You're going to walk where it's a path of least resistance. And a lot of times it's like weight training. Resistance builds strength, right? You don't build strength by doing it easy. You build strength by pushing against that resistance that the weight is in front of you. And so if you're going to grow, if you're going to get better at whatever you're doing, then the easy path is not the one that's going to make the most sense. It's not going to get you to where you need to get to be. And it's being prepared and just not being afraid to succeed. There's basketball. You never make the shots you don't take. You don't miss the shots you don't take, but you don't make them either. And so you've got to, God's given you some talent. God's given you some a path. He's got plans for you. Jeremiah says that He's got plans for you for the good. And so trying to see God's wisdom and God's path, which is hard to do. Hindsight, I can see the path that I was on. I was pretty sure that God led me that direction. Day to day going forward, I didn't necessarily know that was the case. Because you're not given all of that information all at once. Exactly, you just got to keep.
What's the point of faith?
You got to, and keep stepping out in faith each day to just know that you're walking that path. Yeah.
So, I think I know the answer to this question, but where does the motivation come from? What kept you rolling on days where you were like, man, like I don't know if I can do this? Does the motivation come from your faith? Where does it come from?
Yeah, faith and my experience at Ranger Junior College was some of the physically the worst stuff I've ever went through. I mean, I went through boot camp and everything else, but the stuff that coach put us through hurt so badly, and during 2 days that I'd have to fall out of bed and land on all four. I couldn't sit up. I couldn't because it hurt so bad.
Body's so sore.
I'd get up.
Yeah.
But and we started that preseason with over 80 guys, and we would have midnight evacuations. You'd hear them packing up and leaving in the middle of the night and that kind of thing. We wound up, I think, starting the season down to 30. And but he wasn't going to make me quit. There's nothing he could do that's going to make me quit because I just,
the drive.
Yeah. And you practice winning, or if you ever start quitting, it gets easier the next time, and easier the next time, and then it's just almost a habit that you can bail out on something just overnight because you've failed to develop that habit and the strength of purpose to just not quit.
Yeah.
And that's
that goes hand in hand with everything that you do.
That's
and
exactly right.
Starting as young as you did in high school, I mean, what a great example. I think nowadays the generations are a little softer than what they used to be, as you know.
Absolutely.
But, yeah. So, but again, I think that's something that our culture just misses out on, the opportunity to get up every day and do something that sucks in all reality, and what that trains your mind to doing, because, you know, adversity is going to hit. Life's never perfect, and you just got to keep rolling with the punches.
No, that's exactly right.
That's really cool to see kind of how you navigated through life, and, you know, were able to, you know, emulate that mindset and ultimately have the impact you did. I mean, hands down, couldn't be more inspired. So
one quick story, if we got time. One quick story.
Yeah.
So, you know, Charles Cato had a big impact on my life. Never really knew what was going on. There are two folks I want to tell you about real quick that makes some sense. A guy named Russell Conwell was a lawyer, a pastor, a philanthropist, other kind of things. But in 1880, coming out of Massachusetts, he was working with the church there to try to settle out its affairs and close the church. He wound up turning it around. That experience, he led him to a church in Philadelphia. He's working on that church. A young man says he wants to go to seminary, but he can't afford it. So Conwell says, well, come on in and start in the evening, and we'll do some evening classes. I'll try to work with you. That became Temple University.
Are you serious?
Yep.
Wow.
And then the church he was doing also had a healthcare thing, because it was a horrible time in America for healthcare and that kind of stuff, and they started bringing in healthcare folks. That morphed into Temple University healthcare system. Russell Conwell was the president of Temple University until he died in 1925. Credited with over 6,000 professions of faith and baptisms as a result of his preaching and all that he had done. There's another guy named Johnny Ring. Johnny was a little bitty fella, starting in the Civil War, and he's from Massachusetts, and he wanted to be a part of the Union Army, but he's too little. And so he finally convinced him that he could join the military, the Army, but he wouldn't fight. He would be an aide to an officer, you know, just an orderly, a fetch and get it guy. Johnny was a devout Christian. His mom was a strong Christian woman, and so she had made him promise that he would continue to work his faith, read his Bible, pray every day. Well, the officer he gets assigned to is an atheist, and it really irritates him that Johnny's reading the Bible.
Yeah.
And so finally he said, look, you cannot read that Bible in front of me. In fact, if I could, I'd forbid you to read it at all. So Johnny, on the side, would read his Bible, maintain his faith. One of Johnny's responsibilities was a ceremonial saber, a sword that this officer had been given, and it was really important to the officer. Well, one day the Confederates attacked their unit. The unit fled across a river using a railroad bridge to get across. Well, Johnny gets across and realizes he doesn't have that sword. So they've set the bridge on fire to keep the Confederate army from getting back. Johnny runs back across that bridge, finds his tent. And now he's coming across, and the Confederate soldiers thinks he's a little bitty fella. They don't think he's a soldier.
Yeah.
He gets that sword and headed back. And he gets almost across the other side of that burning bridge. He's severely burned. He falls off onto the riverbank with that sword. And so the Union armies grab him, and they get him to the hospital. And Johnny succumbed to his injuries. He died. So his officer that he was working with a few months later is also wounded. And while he is recuperating, he's thinking about Johnny Ring and the example he set, and he actually comes to know Lord Jesus Christ as a personal Savior on the strength, and he credits Johnny Ring's example as the strength of his conversion.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That officer's name was Russell Conwell.
Oh, man.
So Johnny Ring touched one person's life in a meaningful way. And then that person, thousands have been affected. Healthcare, the university, all the things that Russell Conwell did once he's converted. So
that's impact.
Are you going to be the Johnny Ring to somebody? Are you going to be the Russell Conwell to somebody?
Yeah.
But you never can discount the value and the strength and the importance of just doing your job and
showing up
faithful.
every day.
Yep, showing up every day and taking care of the sword.
That's awesome. So I got a couple more questions. Why do you believe the mindset has to be you versus you? I mean, obviously the comparison issue that we deal with every single day. Why is it important to rely on that mindset? Why do you think, based on what you've gone through, based on what you've done in your own life, to not compare? Because ultimately it just steals the joy out of you and what it looks like, obviously, the things that you've done.
Part of it is understanding that God made each one of us unique. And I'm not going to dunk a basketball. I'm not going to do a lot of things. So
there are other people for that.
And but there are things talents that God put in me and blessed me with, and you and everybody else in our family. Everybody has certain talents that God intends to be used in a certain way. And if you misread those talents and you think you're supposed to be doing something else that's not you, then there's a chance you're not going to be successful at it.
Yeah, just fighting the battle uphill.
Yeah. And I'm not going to run a 10 flat, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to get in the Olympics as a sprinter.
Yeah.
That dog wasn't going to hunt.
Ship sailed a little bit.
Yeah. There was no ship to begin with.
Never started.
There was never a ship. That was a remote.
Hey, maybe for football though. Offensive line.
But so it's part of it just recognizing your strength and understanding the weak points where the Satan can work on you, can niggle at you, can tell you, hey, you can't do that, or you're really not good enough to do that, or do you really want to take that risk, and those kind of things. But so just fighting through that and understanding that God's got a reason why you're on this earth, and try to work that plan and understand what it is as best you can. We don't get the outline for the entire life right off the bat. You got to live it one day at a time, and it's really hard and difficult, and you get false starts and everything else. But it's relying on faith to understand that there is a mission.
Yep.
Johnny Ring had a mission.
Yeah.
No one had a clue what that mission would involve and the impact it would be. And obviously, Russell Conwell's life, everybody knew the great things that he did, but had it not been for Johnny Ring doing what he needed to do, that he decided he didn't want to live his faith. He wouldn't let that officer bullying him and not reading his Bible, not praying. If he'd have gone the other direction, then who knows what would have happened with Russell Conwell.
Fighting the good fight.
Absolutely.
Last question. After God calls you home, what do you want to be remembered for?
That one I hadn't thought of. Write your own epitaph. Is that what you're?
Come on.
That I was a good person. That that my faith was strong enough in my life that other people knew it and were influenced by it. That I took care of the responsibilities that I was supposed to have. Not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I got all kind of failures in my past that where I got off on the wrong foot, went the wrong direction, those kind of things. But just that I was a man of strong faith and loved my family and took care of my responsibilities and did what I was supposed to do.
Can't get better than that. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us and just give us a small taste of, kind of your journey and what you've done and the impact you've had. I can't tell you how grateful I am to be sitting here as your grandson, to be able to sit down and just let everybody know the real story and kind of, the journey that you had to go through to get to where you're at. I can't tell you how inspiring it is, and the stories that, for me as being your grandson, I'll tell to my grandchildren one day the impact that you had. So I appreciate you. And
well, thank you. Thank you for having me on. I'm stunningly proud of what your dad and your uncle and your aunt and your Aunt Steffi have done in the lives that they're leading, and it makes Suzanne and I very proud to see the success that our children have had through the great work that the grandkids are doing.
Yeah.
Keep up the good work.
Yes, sir. Well, thanks, guys, for watching. Tune in. Follow us on Instagram, all the social media platforms at tryhorn.com. On to the next one. We'll see you guys then. So thanks for watching.